He only wanted to buy a few apples and head home, but a slap on the street dragged him back into a war he thought he'd left behind years ago. No one recognized him as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not the cop. Not the bystanders. Not the system quietly reviving a program once shut down for violating human rights. What makes a man who chose silence rise again? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The Los Angeles sun was beginning its descent when Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped out of a corner market in the outskirts of Jefferson Heights. He wore a dark zip-up jacket over a faded black t-shirt, old jeans, and weathered boots. Nothing about him screamed wealth or power. Just another man with a quiet face, carrying a brown paper bag filled with apples, water, and protein bars. But there was something in the way he moved. Even at his age, well past the days of championship podiums and press conferences, there was a stillness in him, a kind of weight. He didn't walk fast, but he didn't drift either. His steps were deliberate, grounded, like a man who had once run through fire and chose silence instead of stories. Across the street, Sergeant Harry Macon sat in his patrol car, chewing his gum like it had done him wrong. He watched Arnold exit the store, eyes narrowing. Macon didn't recognize the face. Why would he? Arnold had let the spotlight fade years ago, retreating from politics, from speeches, from headlines. But some reputations don't need introductions. They follow silently. Still, to Macon, he was just another aging man in street clothes. And in Macon's eyes, too comfortable, too confident. That was enough. The cruiser door slammed open. His partner, Officer Trent, barely had time to put down his coffee. "Sarge, wait," he said, but Macon was already crossing the street, hand hovering too close to his belt. Arnold paused at the corner, checking his phone. His eyes didn't lift, but something in his posture shifted. That old instinct, the one trained on stages, in service, in politics, in every room where he was underestimated, kicked in. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. "Hey!" Macon barked. "You pay for that." Arnold raised his eyes. Not startled. Calm. "You saw me at the register." Trent nodded slowly behind Macon. "Yeah. We watched him pay." "I wasn't asking you," Macon snapped. Arnold held up the paper bag. A white receipt was visible through the top. "Everything's in order." But Macon had already made his decision. He stepped in, too close, his breath sour. The street slowed. A woman walking her dog stopped. A man across the way raised his phone, recording. "What's your name?" Macon asked, his voice sharp. "You don't need it," Arnold answered. Macon didn't blink. He just lifted his arm and slapped Arnold across the face. It was loud, clean, sudden. The bag crinkled slightly in Arnold's grip, but he didn't move. His head stayed still. Eyes locked on Macon, unwavering. Not angry. Just present. The air froze. Officer Trent took a step back, uneasy. A teenager muttered, "Yo, did he just hit that guy?" Another whispered, "Wait, is that?" Macon's breath came faster now. "You think you're somebody? Think you own this block?" Arnold's voice was low, steady. "No. But it doesn't belong to you either." Phones were up now. Recording. Witnessing. Trent leaned closer to Macon. "Sarge, I think that's Arnold Schwarzenegger." Macon's nostrils flared. He didn't stop. His hand went to his holster, not drawing, just close enough to speak loud without words. "On the ground." "Now," he said. Arnold gently placed the bag on the pavement. A few apples rolled out. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't resist. He just stood, tall and firm. "You don't want to do this." "You're under arrest," Macon barked, resisting verbal command. He reached for Arnold's wrist, to twist it, to shove him down. But he wasn't grabbing a man afraid of power. In one clean motion, Arnold pivoted, turned the grip, and redirected it. Macon was spun off balance and dropped to the pavement, arm locked. His gun skittered away. He didn't even have time to yell. Phones captured everything. The moment was clean. Absolute. Officer Trent stared, frozen. Then reached for his radio. Unit 12, request immediate supervisor. Jefferson and 9th. Possible unlawful use of force. Suspect is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Scene secure. But the street was no longer quiet. A food vendor shouted, "I saw it." Cops slapped him first. Someone else, "We got it on camera." A chant began, soft but rising, "Let him go. Let him go." On the ground, Macon wheezed, red-faced. "You're done. I run this district." Arnold looked down. Calm. Clear. Not anymore. And then, he walked away, toward something much bigger. The video spread like wildfire. By the first hour, local news stations picked it up, elderly man slapped by officer in broad daylight. But within 2, the footage had gone national. Then global. And by the third hour, the world had a name. Arnold Schwarzenegger. The clip was only 34 seconds long. But it had everything: the slap, the silence, the reversal. A uniformed officer, red-faced and shouting. And a man, calm, unmoving, delivering justice with nothing but precision and presence. Comment sections exploded. Some were stunned he'd even been out in public without security. Others pointed out his history: former California governor, actor, humanitarian, and long-retired federal advisor on public safety. There were rumors he had consulted on conflict resolution programs overseas. A few even remembered whispers of classified roles after his political life faded. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that someone in power had misjudged him. And now the entire country had seen it. At a small office tucked inside a modest brick building downtown, Alexis Rhodes was already downloading the clip, frame by frame, angle by angle. She didn't waste time on outrage. She'd seen worse. But what she hadn't seen, in years of civil rights litigation, was someone like Arnold caught in something like this. And that told her something was off. She rewound the slap. Paused. Watched again. Her assistant poked her head in. "You're watching it again." Alexis didn't look up. "Do we still have the precinct rosters from Jefferson Heights?" "Last year's." "I'll grab them." As the door clicked shut, Alexis leaned back in her chair. She hadn't seen Arnold Schwarzenegger since the policy hearing on urban over-policing, nearly 8 years ago. He'd sat silently in the third row while lawmakers argued over data and budgets. He hadn't spoken, just listened. Then he vanished from public view. No press. No campaigns. No foundation launches. Just disappeared. Until now. She hit play again. The slap. The hesitation. The pivot. And then, the quiet dismantling of a man who thought his badge made him untouchable. Alexis exhaled. He didn't just react. He was waiting. At Lapped Internal Affairs, Chief Miguel Ortiz stared at his phone in silence. He hadn't heard that name in years. But he remembered the call. The one where Arnold said he was walking away. No reasons. No explanations. Just, "It's not my fight anymore." Now, the man who had once trained diplomats on conflict de-escalation was back, and had just gone viral by flipping a sergeant in the street. Ortiz didn't bother with email. He picked up the secure line. "Get me Alexis Rhodes," he said. "Now." By nightfall, the clip had been shared over 50 million times. Hashtags surged. Think pieces emerged. Former students posted grainy gym photos with Arnold in the background. Stories resurfaced, about his quiet visits to youth centers, about bills he pushed for nonviolent intervention training. Even old enemies admitted, he never liked the spotlight. But when he showed up, things changed. At 9:42 p.m., Ortiz and Alexis met in a darkened conference room 2 floors underground. No media. No advisors. Just them. Ortiz slid his tablet across the table. On it, the slap. Paused on impact. "This is going to get bad," he said. Alexis nodded. "Already is." He didn't start it. But he won't let it slide. Ortiz tapped the screen. You understand what that means, right? Alexis looked at him. I think he's hunting something. There was a long pause. Ortiz finally said, then let's find out what it is before it finds him. Inside a windowless office at LAPD's Internal Affairs Division, Chief Miguel Ortiz sat with a worn folder open before him. It smelled faintly of dust and bureaucracy. The contents weren't new, at least not to him, but now they carried a different weight. The cover page bore a simple title, Firewall. Alexis stood across the table, arms crossed, scanning the printouts. I thought this was shut down. Ortiz didn't look up. So did everyone else. She flipped a page. A list of task force assignments. They're still active. Ortiz nodded. Just under new names. Code shifted into municipal patrol units. Transferred. Renumbered. But same officers. Same mindset. Alexis leaned forward. And Macon. Transferred into Jefferson Heights precinct last year. Low complaints. Commendations on file. No flags. She raised an eyebrow. You and I both know what that means. Ortiz closed the file. It means he's protected. They sat in silence for a beat. Alexis broke it. What was the original mandate? Ortiz tapped the folder. Community stabilization. High-risk district control. Selective tactical authority. She shook her head. That's just sanitized language. He didn't deny it. It was supposed to be disbanded, she said. After the lawsuits. After the protests. After we testified. Ortiz exhaled. It never really died. Just buried. Renamed. Reassigned. Alexis stared at the wall. And Arnold. Ortiz looked at her, eyes steady. He helped write the shutdown protocols. That made her pause. Ortiz continued. He worked with federal oversight teams. He trained half the first-wave officers in de-escalation. He taught ethics seminars at the academy before anyone believed in reform. And then he left. Ortiz nodded. Said he was done. Said people didn't want to change, just wanted to feel safer. Alexis whispered, but now he's back. Ortiz slid over another file. Inside were transcripts of internal briefings, operations maps, outdated photos of tactical groups. At the top of one memo, stamped in faded red, Firewall, Unit 8B. That's where Macon landed, Ortiz said. That's where this all started again. Alexis turned the page. Names. Logs. Crossed out dates. They were preparing for something. Ortiz agreed. Reactivation. Why now? Ortiz didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a printed email. 3 months ago, someone from the DOJ flagged inconsistencies in precinct reports across 4 cities. Shared language. Similar suppression tactics. Sealed records. They traced the patterns back here. To LAPT. To Firewall. Alexis read the last line aloud. Unit 8B shows identical operational indicators as pre-disbanded firewall groups. Likely still active. Request field validation. She looked up. And you didn't act. Ortiz's face was unreadable. I had no proof.
No whistleblower. No footy.
And now you do. They sat with that for a moment. Finally, Alexis said, if he's back, it's not random. He's here for a reason. Ortiz nodded. And if Firewall's still running, then someone high up brought it back. Someone powerful. Ortiz tapped the folder again. Then we follow the file. Alexis stood. And we find out who gave them the green light. As she reached the door, Ortiz called after her. Alexis. She turned. Be careful. She nodded once. Always. Behind them, the folder remained open. And somewhere, in a precinct with clean floors and dirtier secrets, Unit 8B was waiting. It was nearly midnight when Arnold parked on a quiet side street in Echo Park. The city had softened. The noise of the day, the headlines, the reposts, the endless speculation, had finally gone still. But inside the faded duplex ahead of him, silence wasn't peace. It was hiding. According to Alexis's files, Officer Ethan Vels once lived here. A young patrolman who'd filed a misconduct report 3 years ago, and vanished within a month. The mailbox still bore the name. Barely legible. But it was there. Arnold stepped out of the car, his footsteps steady on the cracked sidewalk. He didn't wear a wire. Didn't call backup. This wasn't official. This was personal. He knocked once. No response. He knocked again, firmer. A voice came from inside. "Who is it?" Arnold didn't flinch. "Someone who didn't bury your report." A pause. Then the door cracked open, chain still latched, revealing a man in his early 30s. Pale. Unshaven. Eyes like a cornered animal. "You shouldn't be here," Ethan said. "I had to be." Inside, the apartment was stripped to the essentials. No electronics. No TV. A single cot in the corner, a backpack on the floor, and a worn laptop on the table. There was a pistol beside it. Loaded. They sat in silence for a long time.
No introductions.
No small talk. Finally, Ethan spoke. "You don't understand. Firewall isn't a task force. It's a doctrine. They're still training rookies in it. Still operating in other cities. I saw things. When I tried to report," his voice cracked. "They made it clear. Leave quietly, or end up quiet forever." Arnold said nothing. He let the words hang in the air. Let them settle. Then Ethan stood, walked to the laptop, and typed in a long password. A folder opened. Labeled, "Do not open unless dead." Inside were videos, PDFs, training materials, internal memos, maps, names. "This is what they don't want exposed," Ethan said. "I was scared. Still am. But after what happened to you, I realized something." He looked up. "They're not afraid of cameras. They're afraid of the people behind them." Arnold nodded. Ethan whispered, "So I'm giving this to you." Arnold didn't take the hard drive immediately. He looked at Ethan first. "You don't have to be scared anymore." Ethan almost laughed. "You still believe that?" "I have to." He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, not to reassure, but to ground. "You matter." That night, Arnold drove back across the city with the drive in his coat pocket. His hands steady. His mind, sharper than it had been in years. Not from adrenaline. From purpose. The next morning, inside a DOJ conference room, Alexis and Ortiz sat beside him as the footage played. On screen, firewall instructors barking orders. Recruits repeating lines like mantras. "You're not here to serve. You're here to control. Justice is an illusion. Fear is order." Another clip, helmet cam footage of aggressive takedowns. Peaceful citizens being labeled as threats. Files with redacted names. Operations with sealed outcomes. And then, one video. A man, face blurred, stood before a group of cadets. "When the public panics, you hold the narrative. If they protest, frame them. If they film you, disable it. You are the authority. Remember that." The screen went black. Ortiz exhaled. "This is systemic." Alexis looked at Arnold. "This isn't just proof. This is strategy." Arnold nodded slowly. "Then it's time we build one of our own." They all knew what came next wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, they had leverage. And Arnold wasn't going to waste it. It was just after midnight when Arnold stepped into the hollowed-out warehouse on the edge of the industrial zone in West Vernon. The concrete floor echoed beneath his boots.
No windows.
Just cold steel and dim overhead lights casting long shadows. Perfect for what they were about to do. Around him, DOJ cybertechs and internal affairs agents worked in silence. Tiny cameras wired into support beams. Audio feeds tested and retested. Every angle. Every breath. Tracked. This wasn't an arrest. It was an invitation. Earlier that morning, Ortiz had made the call, with Alexis's approval and Arnold's quiet nod. They would use him as bait. A controlled leak had been planted, not through press or public channels, but via an encrypted message, routed through a burner server to a known intermediary in Firewall's inner circle. The content was short. Arnold Schwarzenegger is in possession of classified Firewall materials. He intends to go public. Unless someone stops him. Within 2 hours, a reply arrived. No names. No pleasantries. Location. Time. They'd taken the bait. By 1 a.m., surveillance was active. Alexis and Ortiz watched from a mobile unit parked 2 blocks away. A DOJ tactical team waited nearby, in blackout gear, just beyond the line of engagement. But no one would move until it was time. Inside, Arnold stood alone beneath a single overhead light. No body armor. No weapons. Just black gloves, a dark jacket, and a face carved by decades of consequence. He activated a secured live stream. No title.
No branding.
Just his silhouette. He said one sentence, "You tried to silence the wrong man." Then he shut it off. 26 seconds. Just long enough for Firewall to see it. And come. At 1:18 a.m., a black SUV appeared at the far end of the block. Headlights off.
No plates.
A second vehicle followed, tinted windows, no markings. Ortiz muttered, watching the drone feed, "They came heavy." The first SUV stopped directly outside the warehouse. 2 men stepped out. Not cops. Not civilians. They moved with precision. One wore tactical boots. The other scanned the building with quiet calculation. They didn't knock. Instead, they used a magnetic tool to bypass the side entrance. Silent. Smooth. Inside, Arnold didn't flinch. "Mr. Schwarzenegger," one said, voice neutral. "We're here on behalf of someone who wishes to speak privately." Arnold didn't move. "Then tell him to stop hiding." A third man entered. Taller. Older. Dressed in a tailored gray suit and silver tie. Senator Donovan Harland. Publicly, a champion of law enforcement reform. A polished speaker. Committee chair. But behind the curtain, his name whispered through funding trails and advisory boards tied to Firewall's past and present. Arnold recognized him instantly. "You created this mess," Harland said, hands behind his back. "You exposed men who were keeping order. And now the country will suffer for your little display." "You don't define order," Arnold replied, voice even. Harland smirked. "I define reality. Firewall was built for resilience. Leak whatever you want. People don't want truth. They want control. And we gave it to them." "You're not addressing a crowd," Arnold said. "You're facing me." Harland stepped forward. "You think you'll win because of a video? A few files?" Arnold's gaze narrowed. "No," he said. "I think it ends with you in handcuffs." Harland's face hardened. He gave a subtle nod. The 2 men behind him reached into their jackets. But they never finished the motion. Arnold stepped forward, one fluid motion. He disarmed the first with a wrist lock, sent the weapon skidding across the concrete, then pivoted, driving the second man into a steel support beam with a forceful redirect. It lasted under 7 seconds. The warehouse erupted with floodlights. Ceiling panels burst open. Tactical agents stormed in, weapons drawn. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Harland froze, lips tightening. Ortiz entered next, badge displayed. "This is exposure." Alexis followed, tablet in hand, live streaming the entire event to secured federal servers. "Congratulations, Senator," she said. "You just confessed to maintaining an illegal domestic enforcement network. On record." Harland hissed through clenched teeth. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Arnold stepped forward, voice steady. "I know exactly who you are. I've spent a lifetime teaching people how to face fear. Now I'm facing you. The agents cuffed all three men. Outside, their vehicles were impounded. Every file, every device, seized. There was no going back. By 3 a.m., media outlets had already begun to circulate rumors. Something big had broken. And by dawn, the first name hit the headlines. Senator Donovan Harland, arrested in domestic conspiracy. But Arnold wasn't celebrating. He knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. By 4:12 a.m., the tactical unit had completed processing the warehouse scene. Senator Donovan Harland had been transferred to a secure federal holding center, and the briefcase retrieved from his SUV was being analyzed by DOJ forensics. Arnold didn't sleep. He sat in the back of a surveillance van, staring at the hard drive taken from Harland's personal effects. The night was silent, but inside the drive, chaos lived. Ortiz stood beside Alexis, scanning the contents. Encrypted files. Coded transfers. Alias emails linked to shell companies. But one stood out. A sealed envelope. Physical. No digital trail. Alexis opened it and pulled out a single sheet. One name. Randolph Stain. The air changed. Arnold's eyes didn't blink. But something behind them stirred. He knew that name. Long ago, in the shadow of his political years, Arnold had seen Stain's fingerprints. Not publicly. Never in front of a camera. But in meetings that didn't make it to transcripts. In documents that had no letterhead. In whispers from men who wore medals without names. Alexis read aloud, former black budget strategist. Tied to private military firms. Last known contract, 6 years ago. Before Vanguard collapsed, Ortiz added. Arnold nodded. He was never meant to be found. He designed firewall. Alexis asked. Ortiz replied quietly. He didn't just design it. He structured it to survive exposure. Layered leadership. Cut out names. No paper trails. If someone leaked, the system bled, but never died. He's not a leader, Arnold said. He's a ghost engineer. Alexis tapped the tablet. He's still out there. Ortiz added, Stain isn't hiding out of fear. He's hiding because the moment you expose him, you dismantle the entire doctrine. Arnold leaned forward. Then we make him come to us. They stared at him. He continued. We do it the same way we baited Harland. But this time, we don't target the face. We target the foundation. At noon, Arnold returned to his loft. It wasn't much. Concrete walls. A single chair. A weight bench near the window. On the table, he found a manila envelope taped to the surface. No address.
No markings.
Inside, a photo. His goddaughter. 14 years old. Caught mid-step walking home from school. On the back, a handwritten note. Back off. Next time, we get closer. Arnold didn't panic. He just breathed. Deep. Controlled. Then he picked up the photo, folded it neatly, and walked into the DOJ conference room. He placed it on the table. Ortiz went pale. This was on your table. Arnold nodded. Alexis leaned forward. We need surveillance footage. There won't be any, Arnold said. They've already scrubbed it. She cursed under her breath. Ortiz whispered, they're escalating. They're getting desperate, Arnold corrected. There was a long pause. Then Arnold spoke again, voice lower this time. We end this now. That evening, inside a secure DOJ operations room, the core team assembled. Arnold, Alexis, Ortiz, 2 federal prosecutors, and a logistics expert in covert ops. The briefcase from Harland had revealed more than names. It held communication chains between Stain and operatives. Files dating back over a decade. Records of quiet black contracts. Orders for suppression. An entire program built not just to enforce, but to eliminate. And then one document, a directive labeled, Containment Protocols Classified. Arnold read it. In the event of exposure, initiate media destabilization, authorize influence suppression, lethal discretion, authorized under emergency code red. They looked at one another. Ortiz spoke first. This isn't policy. It's war planning. Alexis whispered, this isn't domestic anymore. This is criminal conspiracy. Arnold stood. Then we don't chase him. Alexis turned. What do you mean? We make him move. The way we flushed Harland. They all nodded. Then Alexis spoke. I have a contact. Former corporate intelligence. He runs an underground whistleblower channel. Arnold asked, can we trust him? She paused. He owes me his life. That's the only currency I'll take. Plans began forming on the wall. Encrypted leaks. Fake metadata. Strategic breadcrumbing. And one goal, make Randolph Stein think the walls were closing in. Arnold wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. He was setting the fire to smoke them out. The plan moved quickly. Using Alexis's contact at Watchline, a whistleblower platform based out of London, they coordinated a controlled leak. Not a full document dump, just enough to trigger panic. A reference to Firewall's overseas affiliates, buried metadata, and one internal memo tied to RS, initials no one outside the inner circle would recognize. The drop came from a fabricated IP address in Istanbul. Within 3 hours, encrypted chatter spiked. Hidden accounts were accessed. Funds moved. And then, the breach they needed. A signal from Palm Springs, traced to a private airfield long suspected to be connected to Stein. He was preparing to run. Arnold didn't hesitate. He suited up quietly, dressed in black. Not military gear. Just the kind of clothing a man wears when there's nothing left to prove. At 8:30 p.m., under the desert sky, 2 black SUVs and a DOJ armored van surrounded the airfield. No warning. No press. Ortiz turned to Arnold. Let us go in first. Arnold shook his head. I am the backup. He stepped out, boots crunching gravel, walking toward the hangar as the jet's engine idled. Inside, Randolph Stein waited. Older than the photos suggested. Hair thin, coat sharp, mirrored sunglasses hiding what was left of his nerves. A briefcase sat at his side, already packed. He didn't flinch when Arnold entered. You, Stein said. The dinosaur. Arnold didn't respond. You think you can stop this? You don't understand what I built. I understand exactly, Arnold said. You built a machine. I came to turn it off. Stein smirked. You think Firewall was about force? No. It was about control. About making people feel safe, even if they didn't understand what they were giving up. You used fear as order. It worked. You used men as tools. All systems need sacrifice. Arnold stepped forward. Not anymore. From behind a crate, 2 guards emerged, armed. They didn't get the chance to act. In less than 10 seconds, Arnold had disarmed one, slamming his elbow into the man's throat, twisting the weapon from his hand. The second went down with a brutal sweep, crashing into the steel support of the jet. Stein didn't move. But his hands trembled. You're fast, he muttered. But this won't save your legacy. Arnold stepped close, grabbed Stein by the coat, pulling him just enough to make him feel small. I'm not saving my name, Arnold whispered. I'm saving theirs. The hangar doors burst open. Floodlights. Boots. DOJ agents. Ortiz led the charge. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Stein was cuffed. The briefcase seized. Inside, hard drives, forged identities, international transfer codes. By 10 p.m., Randolph Stein was in custody. By 11 o'clock, DOJ held a press conference, architect of Firewall apprehended. Federal charges pending. The news exploded. Video of the takedown surfaced within minutes. Analysts broke down every frame. Headlines raced to catch up. Politicians distanced themselves. Civil rights leaders called it the biggest domestic accountability action in over 2 decades. But Arnold wasn't watching. He was already home. And waiting for him, taped to the door of his gym, was a note. Handwritten. No name. You didn't just fight for us. You reminded us we were worth the fight. Arnold read it, held it quietly, then stepped inside. The lights were low. The old wooden bench hadn't changed. The wall of photos, kids he'd mentored, volunteers, community events, stood untouched. He sat down on the bench. And breathed. Not in victory, but in clarity. There would always be another system. Another silence. Another hidden hand. But tonight, for the first time in years, he knew something had shifted. Not just in the headlines, but in the hearts of people who'd stopped believing they mattered.